Hello, Joel Tadman here from Golf Monthly, and in this video we're taking a look at the performance of the new Titleist AVX golf ball. Now this is an addition to Titleist's premium offering. It has the same RRP as the Pro V1 and Pro V1x at £52 a dozen. And you're probably wondering what it's all about. Well, AVX stands for alternative to V and X, so Pro V1 and Pro V1x. And that alternative being a ball that is slightly softer feeling, is going to give golfers a little bit more distance and lower spin. If you want to find out more about the technology that Titleist have implemented to achieve that, make sure you visit the Golf Monthly website. You can find out all the details on there. But in this video, we're simply talking about the performance of this golf ball and how it compares to Pro V1 and Pro V1x. Now, I underwent a very thorough testing process to assess the performance of this golf ball. I went to Woburn Golf Club, met up with the Titleist guys, and went through a pretty thorough ball fitting on the range using TrackMan. This was my starting point. So we hit some drivers, 7-irons and pitch shots with my 54 degree. And what I didn't know was happening was the Titleist ball fitter was actually sneaking a few Pro V1s. When I was hitting driver, he was throwing me some Pro V1s. I was hitting those when I was actually thinking I was hitting AVX, but I'm surprised I didn't notice because the balls actually look quite different. We'll come on to that in a second. But my initial findings from the TrackMan testing I did on the range at Woburn were the AVX golf ball unquestionably provides lower spin off the tee with the driver and a little bit more distance with the irons. On the 50-yard pitch shot, it was fairly similar. It wasn't quite spinning as much as the Pro V1. But what was interesting was from the initial testing I did on the range was that AVX wasn't actually necessarily delivering me any more distance off the tee from that lower spin, because I am already a low spin player. I'm not a golfer that actually needs any less spin with my driver. So I was actually spinning it around 2000 with the Pro V1 and around 1700 with the AVX. So wasn't getting any more distance from off the tee. I was getting a few more yards with my 7-iron with the AVX golf ball. So after we got those initial findings from the range session, we then went on the Duchess course at Woburn to try AVX up against my current ball, which is the Pro V1x, to see what performance differences I could notice when playing it out on the golf course. And the first thing I noticed off the tee with the driver is that Avx Flies a lot lower. That window, that ball flight window that AVX comes into off the tee is much, much lower than Pro V1x. For me, it looked like it was around about 10 yards low, which for me is fairly significant. Often when testing from ball to ball, especially balls that cost the same price, you don't see many differences in the performance or flight, but this was unquestionably easy to spot how much lower the AVX was flying compared to Pro V1x. There were a couple of other things I really noticed out on the golf course during my testing. The first was that the AVX doesn't quite spin as much on those short chips and pitch shots around the green. I wasn't quite getting that grab on the second bounce that I was accustomed to with my Pro V1x. That said, it was still checking up nicely. There was a good amount of control there, but it wasn't quite to the level of Pro V1x. And the second thing I noticed was that the AVX definitely feels softer on all long game shots. In fact, the longer the shot, the softer the feel was for me. I noticed it was softer. So it was especially noticeable on the driver and iron shots, slightly less so on kind of pitch shots and chip shots, and then with the putt I didn't really feel like there was much difference between the two. One thing we haven't talked about yet is the look of this golf ball. It's not something I thought I would ever be talking about in a golf ball review video, but it's actually interesting how much different the AVX does look compared to Pro V1 and Pro V1x, and that's because of this catenary dimple pattern. So if you look at it, it unquestionably looks different. That's because the dimples are a slightly different shape, and that does contribute to the lower flight. They're actually, if you think of the dimples more as a paddling pool shape, so going straight down at the sides, then flat, then up again, compared to Pro V1 and Pro V1x, which have slightly more rounded dimples. That's the best way I can describe the difference in the dimples between the two balls, and it is certainly noticeable when you're looking at it closely. The other thing to talk about with the looks of both these golf balls is the fact that Titleist offer the AVX in a yellow option, which is the first time they've offered a premium golf ball like this in a yellow option. So if you're someone that prefers that yellow option, maybe you play it in the winter, or you just prefer the visibility of that colour golf ball out on the course, that's an option you have with AVX that you don't have with Pro V1x. Now the final, arguably most exhaustive bit of testing I did with this AVX golf ball was at Foresight HQ yesterday, up against Pro V1 and Pro V1X, and I did a really thorough test of this golf ball. I hit a 50-yard pitch, a full pitching wedge, 7-iron, 4-iron and driver with AVX, Pro V1 and Pro V1X. As you can imagine, I was pretty knackered by the end of it, but it was a very interesting process to go through because I really wanted to kind of validate and back up what I experienced at Woburn and just make sure that it wasn't a one-off, just to really check and validate the performance of this golf ball compared to Pro V1 and Pro V1X. And the performance I experienced from my testing at Foresight did kind of back up the performance I got at Woburn. So I'm going to kind of just talk you through, I've got my phone here just to give you the headline details. So the AVX was the lowest spinning on all full shots apart from the pitch shot. You might expect it to launch a little bit higher on the pitch shot because it's riding up the face a bit more. It's not being gripped as much by the grooves because it wasn't spinning quite as much on that. It was about a 40-yard pitch shot. So AVX wasn't quite spinning as much as Pro V1 and Pro V1X. Pro V1X was the high spinning on the pitch shot. Fairly noticeable, especially out on the golf course. And the other really significant finding I got with AVX was it is around about 3 to 5 yards longer on all full shots. So from driver all the way down to pitching wedge, it was slightly longer, and that's possibly due to the slightly lower spin I was getting. So the big question, who is AVX aimed at, and would I play this golf ball over Pro V1 and Pro V1X? Well, like I mentioned, AVX does feel softer than those golf balls. It doesn't quite spin as much around the green, but it does give you a bit more distance. For most golfers, a lower spinning golf ball off the tee is going to deliver more distance. And while it might actually spin a little bit less than Pro V1 and Pro V1X with iron shots, it actually flew a little bit higher. So you haven't got to worry about a lack of stopping power. You get the distance from that lower spin, but you're getting stopper power from a slightly higher ball flight. I think a lot of Pro V1 and Pro V1X users should really consider the reasons why they're using that golf ball and whether AVX is a genuine alternative for them that could benefit their games. Lower spin with the driver is going to give golfers, a lot of golfers, a little bit more distance. Around the greens, yes, AVX doesn't quite spin as much, but I would say the differences are fairly minor, especially on those slightly shorter chip shots. The difference is fairly negligible, but Pro V1 and Pro V1X does spin a little bit more, give you a little bit more control around the greens. And then you've got to think about ball flight. Do you hit the ball too high? Would a lower ball flight perhaps give you a little bit more total distance? For me, actually, testing it on the golf course, Pro V1X and AVX gave me, although the flights were very different, the total distance was very similar. So for me personally, as a relatively low spin, high speed player, I don't think AVX is going to replace my Pro V1X simply because I'm not a golfer that would benefit from lower spin off the tee or more distance necessarily from my iron shots, and I like the control that Pro V1X gives me, and I'm not necessarily someone who looks for a softer feel. For me, Pro V1X feels just as soft as I want it to. I don't necessarily want a softer feeling golf ball, but if you have a preference in that area, AVX is definitely an option to consider. Like I mentioned, all the other benefits that AVX offers, and I think it really does highlight and give a greater differentiation between Titleist premium offerings. Pro V1 and Pro V1X, they're actually quite similar, as in the differences between them aren't that great, whereas AVX, you think of Pro V1X and Pro V1 here, AVX is quite a big separation from those two models. It's a lower compression golf ball, it feels slightly softer, it gives golfers a third choice that is a stark difference to Pro V1 and Pro V1X. If you think you might be interested in the feel and performance that AVX offers compared to Pro V1 and Pro V1X, I do recommend you get a sleeve of AVX, try it out on the golf course up against your Pro V1 or Pro V1X, see if you notice any difference in the way the ball reacts on the green when it lands on chips and pitch shots, see if you notice any difference in the ball flight and stopping power. Look at where your ball's pitching, where it's running out to on the greens on approach shots. Look at the ball flight with the driver. See if you're noticing a different window in terms of where that ball is peaking at, and is that something that you think might actually benefit your game? Would you potentially benefit from a slightly lower, more boring ball flight that's running a little bit more? And if you want a softer feeling golf ball, of course, it's going to deliver that as well. But hopefully that's given you a good insight into how AVX differs to the Pro V1 and Pro V1X. Like I said, comes in at the same price. Give them both a try, see which one is going to suit your game the best. Thanks for watching. I hope you found that review helpful. Let us know what you think. Check out all our other reviews on the Golf Monthly website. But for now, from West Hill, it's goodbye.